Got the best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmets casted as top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Ticket check. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just drop. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Geeks Vegas Lines and Betting Angles breakdown, where we take a look at all of the games this week on the Wildcard slate from a betting angles and daily fantasy perspective. With me, as always, I've got the sports gambling and DFS GOAT himself, top 20 ranked DFS player, prints $100,000 bills like the U.S. Mint. John Statsational, Alessia, what's up, my man? Welcome back again.
Yeah, we're going back to back here.
Going back to back. We did a fantasy postseason episode where we kind of looked at the overview for your fantasy postseason leagues, best ball leagues, just before. Go check it out on the DFS Army's YouTube page or podcast, wherever you enjoy these episodes. And now we're taking a look at Betting Angles DFS. We're breaking down Wildcard Weekend for your listening and viewing pleasure, for your money-making pleasure. And basically, you know, the sites have done this in a couple different ways. You can play a 6-game slate. You can play a 3-game slate on Saturday and a 3-game slate on Sunday. All really fun ones to attack. So, John, which of these are you looking forward to the most, or you don't give a shit, you attack everything?
Yeah, I think don't give a shit pretty much sums it up. You know how I do it. I like I like that. I like a 6-game. Just I like those, but the big millies are what? There's 2, 3. Saturday and Sunday millies on Draftkings.
I'm going to tell you right off the bat. I'm going to pop this up on the screen, man. It's not for me. So I want to show you what Draftkings did here. I know you're going after it, John, because $4,000 in entries to you, 4,500 is. Or what are we talking? 2,500, another 1,250, 30, 3,750 in entry fees. That's just like a walk in the park. But I do have to say this: $2.5 million in the prize pool, $1 million of it to first.
It's always crazy. You know, the millie. It's always crazy.
I mean, this one's like egregious.
Well, did you see where I was last week in the fourth quarter in the millie?
No.
Oh, I was sitting.
Take our other guy, my boy who won the million last week. My boy, hang on, what's his name? My boy Drew Healy took down the million. Were you trying to take it from him?
I was sitting third.
Yeah, Let me tell you something. DT Healy, who won the million, that's a life changer for him. So very special. But were you up there as well? You were in third?
I was in third, man. I had that same lineup in multiple contests. So I changed. So I told you I'll do like 450 lineups. I did 150 lineups and just kind of plastered all the 150 maxes. And then, so I was sitting there with that lineup, of course, winning all the smaller ones, and just disaster hit late. The Judy touchdown for like 92 yards or whatever it was. Just that was brutal. And then, and who was the other, Jonathan Taylor was I didn't have, so I had Henry in that lineup, and of course they're not giving the ball to Henry down at the goal line, because why would you? He's not that type of a back, right? He not the type of guy who could get you a yard.
Tough to complain about Henry's score last week.
No, he was great. But
but Jonathan Taylor did smash too. Listen, isn't it funny how late in the season, I didn't do a review show, but our chalkboard was very clear. You play Henry, Taylor, and Ty Montgomery in your lineups. Like, it was very, very clear who to play. And it's been amazing to watch how the season has progressed. Again, where the data starts to catch up. And early in the season, a lot of the running back chalk, for example, was off and wrong. But by this point in the season, it's been spot on. So really been impressed by essentially the way that the season flipped from don't fuck with running backs early because they're all so volatile and hard to predict to the last few weeks, which were very much like, oh, yeah, okay, we know who's going to be the best. And then they perform like the best. And the chalkboard pointed it out very clearly that you should have had Henry and Taylor were the cash game combo. I mean, should have had them both.
Yeah. No,
Well,
I mean, I was actually shocked that Montgomery was he was a little lower owned than I thought he was going to be. I think he was like 22 in the middle. Yeah, he was fine. I thought he was going to be higher owned, but he wasn't. So
because there were other options. There was the Jets guy. There was there was a player on the Panthers, Rod Smith.
Smith, yeah.
There were a few other cheapies floating around last week. But let's get into this week's slate. So we've got a 6-gamer. Again, there's 2 3-game slates. I will not be in them. I'm not playing in a 40% to first contest. I'm just not going to do it. Guys, I will never have this. I hope I do one day have $1 million screenshot of myself winning to show you, but it ain't coming off of this. I'm not doing that. But I know you will. But I don't mind these 6-game slates either. There's a slightly smaller contest on DraftKings, a little more palatable, 100K to first, 400,000, so 25% to first. Still not wonderful. I do like the format that FanDuel's doing a lot better for most of these tournaments lately. So I got to give FanDuel some props for that. Let's take a look at if they have a 2-game slate at all. Here, Saturday, Sunday. Let's see what they did for Saturday, Sunday. Yeah, this is a nice little contest. 300,000, 100K to first. Here's a $2 version. So there, different contests you can get into. Here's a snap. Not as exciting of a top prize, but more winnable. So a couple of interesting 3-game slate. 2-game. I think I'm going to focus more on individual lineups for this slate, not necessarily MME. And maybe we'll MME those 3-game slates and try to take them down, hit the nuts, or tie with a bunch of people. But for the purpose of this discussion, let's talk about the 3-game slate, the 6-game slate, right? No, this is Saturday only. Again, let me go back to this. The 6-game slate, and we're going to go game by game here. So let's start with the first game on the board. We've got the Colts at the Bills. Colts are 6.5-point road underdogs, taking on the Buffalo Bills. Bills, a team we really like a lot to play a lot of games. 6.5-point spread, obviously. Colts have been a pretty good defense, but nothing spectacular. So I'll throw this over to you. Does anything stand out to you, John, as a betting angle for this game? 51 points seems kind of high, but maybe it's not. I don't know. 6.5-point favorite Bills against a good defensive team. Anything stand out here to you?
No, not particularly on this game. I think the Colt defense, though, is getting a little bit more respect than perhaps they deserve, just because I think it's more of a first impression. They haven't been as good as they were early in the season. You've been able to get some, score some points here on this team. I had this game at 52, so 51 is not crazy, but I could see this game going over. If I had to lean anyway, I would lean to the over in this game. And like I said, the Bills offense is really clicking right now as well. And like I said, I think the Colts are getting this. They're getting more respect on the defensive side than I think maybe is warranted.
I think when I take a look at the Saturday only slate and in the context of this specific game, you've got Josh Allen or Tom Brady as your 2 premier quarterbacks on that slate, and I do think Josh Allen is the premier quarterback on that one, the best one. In the 2-gamer together, I think you have to give a nod or at least a consideration to Lamar Jackson and anything to do with that Baltimore. So that Baltimore-Tennessee game just looks sexy on the 2-gamer. We'll get to it. Getting back to this game, we'll talk about some of the pieces. It's really hard. The guy you want to play from the Colts is Jonathan Taylor. He's been amazing. It's not what do you do in a situation like this where you've got this great running back, but the matchup doesn't suit him as much in terms of being a road underdog. And again, I got to stop using the term road and home like it matters with no fans or with very few fans. But being a road underdog, Jonathan Taylor does stand out as a great running back on the slate. Maybe the best matchup, because Derrick Henry's got that tougher draw against the Ravens. Can you play Taylor here? Do you pay up? I mean, what do you do in this situation? Well, I threw that. Yeah. What did you
Did you just freeze up, or did I just freeze up?
No, you froze up a little bit. So,
I'm sorry.
What do you do in this situation? Jonathan Taylor looks really good in this spot, but he's an underdog. Like, what do you do here? I mean, you can't really load up on him 100%. All things considered, as a heavy underdog, but he looks like the best running back on the slate potentially.
Yeah, when you scan through these other games, there's not a lot of great run. I mean, you've got Henry, of course, playing, but
Kamara would be
Kamara. Kamara's but not a great matchup, but Kamara's probably the top back, back here. Cleveland as well, running type of team. I just don't think you're going to get too heavy on any of these running backs here. Taylor, while it's not a smash, but the Buffalo defense is not that good. What we're worried about, the concern here is that the lead gets to the point. If Buffalo can score and they have the ability to score quickly, if they get to that point where maybe we don't see as much Taylor as we could. Yeah, I don't think this is a situation. At least I'm always thinking mass, MME, where I don't think I'm going to have. I think I'm going to be fairly well spread out with my running backs this week. I don't see a running back that I need to necessarily lock button.
Yeah, it's tricky. I again going through each slate, especially the first week, especially the Saturday slate. It's very difficult to hone in on running backs that you really like, which is why Taylor will remain in the mix. It's just when you look at these games, there's nobody. I think the Colts running backs, or the other guy, Nyheim Hines, is also going to be somebody we're going to have some interest in on the slate, because if the Colts do fall behind, Nyheim Hines can rack up some points really fast in a PPR format, and he is game flow dependent, but the game flow that he depends on is maybe more a little bit of a trailing game flow. Not looking for a smash out of him, but I do like him to, if the team is down, just be involved in the game late. We know that Phillip Rivers likes to throw to his running backs, and we know that they do continue. If you look at the matchups, they do continue to get Nyheim Hines involved in the game. Not as like last week, again, smash game for Taylor. You only saw 20% snap for Nyheim Hines, but on the season he's at 36, and he just gets more action in a game when they are trailing. On the Bill side of this game, I mean, I think Stephon Diggs is one of the premier players on the entire playoff, and certainly in this game and in this matchup, you want to get on top of Stephon Diggs. Don't really love much from the Bills' running game ever, so not super excited there. But John Brown came back the last week of the season, and John, I think that an interesting thing has happened here. The return of John Brown, I think, reduces the excitement about what I think a lot of Cole Beasley's great season was because John Brown has been out for a lot of it. So how do you deal with this? Cole Beasley's priced up, right? You've got John Brown returning. He's priced out. I mean, Cole Beasley at 5,300. It's a tough play outside of like attorney stack. I don't think I can do that in any sort of like a 3-max or quote unquote cash game approach.
I would agree with you there. We love Beasley quite a bit this year, but I think with Brown back, that's going to limit the upside that you have on a Beasley. It probably limits or lowers his floor as well. I think this is the type of slate you mentioned, Diggs. I think this is a slate where I'm just looking at it. I think I want to pay up at wide receiver, and I think I want to pay down at the running back position. I think that's if I'm making 1 lineup or 3 lineups, I think that's the route I want to go.
Unless Kamara, I mean, besides Kamara, you got to get Kamara.
There's but I want to look. Well, you don't have with no Green Bay and no Kansas City. Of course, that limits some of the top wide receiver and pass catching options. So without I'm just looking at it without making a lineup in my head. Maybe it's a Kamara, a couple of high end wide receivers, and then going cheap at the running back, and we like at the flex, especially on DraftKings, you like to have a wide receiver. So I might be limited here. I might be going a little cheaper at the and Himes might be that type of a guy for the reasons that you stated.
Well, that's that pay down option. I think to me, when I look at this overall slate, as a matter of fact, I think I'm going to change our format a little bit, and I want to focus a little more on the overall slate and the position groups here, because I just think it's more beneficial. We can get some betting angles going, but we'll go a little more Wolfpack style here, because I just think it's much more beneficial when looking over this slate as a whole. At running, I think the priority plays are Kamara and Diggs. Those are the two guys that if I'm starting a cash lineup, it's like boom, boom. You got to have these two guys in your lineup. Q tag, C19 tag aside, right? Two healthy guys. So I think that's how you got to start your lineups and figure it out from there for the most part. Now, these are two expensive players, so we'll see how lineups actually look when you try to squeeze them both in. But to me, that's like those are the two priority guys that can put up a large number of points here. Now, in this game, so the Bills have Tre'Davious White. He probably will be on T.Y. Hilton, you would think. But, I mean, it's not 100% stone cold lock button that he will be on him. But you'd think he'll probably be on T.Y. Hilton. Any interest in the passing game for the Colts at all?
I think a little bit, because just again, the Tampa Washington game is a game that's going to be tough. For Patty, that should be a low scoring game. I think the Rams Seahawks becomes difficult with that Rams defense, and then on the Rams side, you have no quarterback. Baltimore Tennessee, the Baltimore defense is pretty good. So as I look through it, I could see there's not a lot of options there. So I could see this being the game potentially. Is this the highest total? It's got to be. Oh no, the Baltimore Tennessee game.
Yeah, that game. So, the sexy game is this is 51. If you go, Baltimore Tennessee is sexy with 54. That's
the game. Yeah.
This is the one we want to build around
because the Tennessee has been pretty good in stacking, but those are the two games. So there's just a lot of these games that aren't that attractive. So I could see. I have no problem. Again, if you're making one lineup, if you want to game stack that game, the Colt game. I have no problem. I think you're going to want to either be on that game or this Baltimore Tennessee game as a game stack. And I really, especially when it's a shorter number of games, shorter slate, I like to have four players. So you could even you could have the running back in that with maybe, like I said, a Hines, Naeem Hines or whatever the hell his name is, but.
No, Naeem Hines,
it's Hines.
Maybe your Devin Singletaries or Zach Mosses of the Bills team, like these cheap guys. Right. It's interesting that those are the two games that stand out because they break up the two slates, right? So on your Saturday only, it's going to be the Bills Colts game to focus on, and you could see why. Rams Seahawks just looks like a shit show. It does. You have a Rams team that's broken without a quarterback potentially, and a Seahawks team that just has not looked great offensively and has been playing strong defense as of late as well, and kind of trying to win games like that. So you're not looking for high scoring, 42.5 point total. But let's talk about that game. Is this total too low? What if Jared Goff comes back? Is this 42.5 points? That seems low for a playoff game.
Yeah, well, I don't. You were talking in the last podcast, where you think sometimes these offenses just kind of, things start to gel sometimes with postseason or where you get to see the best of teams necessarily in the postseason. I think that number is really based on the fact that if you look at what Seattle's done down the stretch against some pretty good defenses, including this Rams team a couple of times, and of course the fact that the Rams are without their quarterback, but even if the quarterback does come back, this does shape up to be a low-scoring affair. Let me look at. I don't know off the top of my head what my numbers were. I had all right. So I had this a little higher, 46. So then if you deduct with the quarterback change, because I had this, I would have this.
Goff was in. Yeah. So Goff, that's what I'm saying. Like, I get it. If Wolford is the quarterback, this number makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah.
What I was getting at was like if a Goff comes back,
He's not going to play though. I don't believe this weekend.
If he doesn't play, then his teammate,
yeah,
going to have a hard time advancing.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt.
Goff is fine. He's not very good, but he's fine.
It's the differential. Again, that's what a lot of people, when they talk about these lines, when you're looking at the line and they're like, well, what's this quarterback worth on the line? It's not just that quarterback, it's who the backup is. In some of these instances, San Francisco, for instance, it's not that big a drop off when they go from Garoppolo to a Beathard or whoever they're going to go, or Mullins, whatever they're going to do. But some of these, of course, the drop off is pretty significant. We saw just a little bit of Wolford last week, was not very impressive against a fairly weak defense. So, in that game, we're looking. I'm not expecting much. We talk about this with Seattle often, where Seattle will play to their competition. And like I said, we've seen that, I don't know, 5-6 weeks now in a row where Seattle they went from Russell Wilson was the greatest player to ever play the game. MVP, I kept, by week 5, he was a lock MVP. No one's talking about Russell Wilson as the MVP anymore. So these things change, and that's just the way. And I told you on the last podcast, it's really based on who they're playing. It's not like we've been surprised. We look at it on a week by week basis here on this podcast, and when we're playing the DFS, we look at it and we were like, okay, no, Seattle's not really good this week. Seattle's not good. We've been saying that for weeks. So, and this is another one of those weeks. So expect Seattle to play down the competition. Everyone's wondering what happened to DK Metcalf. Well, and I'm like, well, he's gone with Wilson. They just haven't been able to score, and that's what they'll do. And they're just trying to win games. And that's the great thing about Russell Wilson is when you need him, to step up big at the end of the game, he's done that a million times. He's got that ability. But I think that their philosophy there is never really throw the ball all over the place. It's throw the ball over the place when we play a team that we have to throw the ball over the place. And their defense has played better. We talked about it again on that last podcast. When their defense is playing well, Russell Wilson's not scoring 40 points.
Seattle, if they get past this game, which I expect them to, and it's a close spread, so we don't know for sure, but if they're a dangerous team in the playoffs, there's no question. As far as this game, from a DFS angles point of view, DK is not my guy when Jalen Ramsey's going to be on him. He hasn't had success in that matchup, and I'm just not going there. You can't pay up for him in that situation, in my opinion. So you've got Cam Akers, who I think is interesting on the Rams. The running game and just in general, he played last week. He seemed fine. Got 21 carries, a bunch of targets. That's a guy that I think is worth rostering, even in a potential losing environment. I don't think he's going to score massive, but he's just a guy that I think is worthy of rostering. Seattle side, it's much tougher at the running back position, both because of an elite defensive Rams team. Plus, now you've got Hyde, Carson, and Rashad Penny all getting touches. I don't like that. So too many guys, too many names, don't like. So as far as this game goes from an DFS angles, you can almost wipe it out. I'm not playing wide receivers necessarily attached to the arm of Wolford. I mean, maybe you can make an argument for Van Jefferson. Hey, where do we go? There where the rain came. That's right. I do classic rock as well as rap. Van Morrison. No one. All right, forget it. Forget it.
We did the Van Morrison last week.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to sing it again. I like to sing that song. I like the song. He got 8 targets last week. Was involved with Cooper Kupp out of the game. So if Cooper Kupp's out again, and I can get Van Jefferson at Stoneman or Josh Reynolds at Stoneman, these are value turds that I'm interested in, right? Let's see. Yeah, Josh Reynolds got 6 targets. So if we get another week of no Cooper Kupp, I think these value turds are going to hold some interest in both of the slates as pay down options. But beyond that, the best bet on Seattle to do damage is actually Tyler Lockett because he will avoid Jalen Ramsey. Really ugly to go back to Tyler Lockett after a big Tyler Lockett week, though. That is like never a good idea, but that's the guy, unfortunately, or more, one of these non-DK Metcalf guys is probably set up a little bit better just because of the matchup. But, man, there's nothing grosser than Tyler Lockett off of a big game and, like, going back to that. There's nothing worse. It's the worst.
Seattle going to be a popular It's going to be a popular DST, no?
Yeah, Rams and Seattle. Seattle will be the. I think Bucks will be the most. No, I think Bucks are going to be the highest.
Bucks.
Yeah,
that's we'll get. I mean, while we're talking about it,
you give me the option.
I don't like that. I don't like that against Alex Smith though.
I play the Bucks. I like Seattle. I think let's take a look at salaries here. Good. I mean, good points. What you're making. So let's see here. Seattle. Very cheap. Oh,
it's $7. That's what I'm saying. It's $700 less. I'm taking Seattle there against that quarterback. The thing about Alex Smith, he's not. He doesn't turn the ball over that much. I know he had a couple, and a lot of them weren't his fault. That game Sunday night, which was a debacle. But yeah, he's not the type of guy who I necessarily love to target in a game that's going to be low scoring. So I think with that price differential, Seattle's going to be the team everyone's on here.
Yeah, I think you're right. If salaries are an issue with them, they may not be on the 3-gamer, by the way. They will be on the 6-game because there's more options to choose from. I did notice on the 3-gamers, salary wasn't too big of a concern. But yes, I think Seattle at home, and they've been playing great defense against a bad quarterback who, he's in the playoffs. He played one game. That is a situation ripe for disaster. And I agree with you. I actually think Seattle is the best defense play on the board here by far, kind of. So yeah, I give me a little Rams, a little Bucks, but I agree with you. And maybe, I mean, if you want to pay up for the Saints, sure. All right, let's take a look at the next game on the board here. The aforementioned Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road taking on Washington. 8-point favorite Bucks. There's not too much to go over here, John. There are angles we need to be involved in this game. It's on a 3-game slate, but overall, we talked about this on the previous show. I kind of think the Bucks could be favored by more here. Great defensive team going up against a bad offensive team. You've got a good offense going up against a good defense. So it's strength on weakness, strength on strength for the Bucks here. What say you about this 8-point spread? Is it just too much to bet the Bucs side?
Yeah, we talked about it again earlier. I just think I would have had this number about 7, so I think 8's a little much. I don't like to bet against Brady. I've talked about this. It's just has not been profitable, so I need a lot more reasons in my model. So my model needs to be that much more on the other team before I'll go against. I just don't have that in this game right here. But what I talked about before was I've been looking towards this matchup for weeks now because it looked like Tampa was going to get that NFC East opponent, and they did. And if that opponent was Washington, I think the biggest Achilles heel to Tom Brady over the years has been teams that can rush him with 4 guys and get to the quarterback. They've got the ability, Washington does. Not saying Washington's going to win this game because I just don't like their offense. I don't think they're going to be able to score enough. But what I think you're going to see is a fairly low-scoring type of game. They'll be able to get to Brady. Just think about those giant teams that beat him. I talked about when Miami would be able to get to him with like Jason Taylor, those teams. So through his career, and of course his mobility is non-existent. He didn't have much earlier in his career. He's got none now. You saw it a couple of times this year. The Bears gave him all sorts of problems rushing. He couldn't do anything against the Bears. The Saints have given him some issues. The Rams gave him a lot of problems.
Could be without Mike Evans.
Yeah, that doesn't concern me as much because they're just so talented at that position that they'll be able to make up for that loss. And I don't even think it's going to be reflected in the point spread.
I look at the player loss as a great thing for DFS purposes. If I could focus in this Tampa offense on fewer players, I love it. Makes me way more excited about Godwin and Antonio Brown and Gronk if I don't have a fourth mouth to feed over there. Now, Ken's asking what's the most comfortable line you feel safe with if you were to bet the Bucs. And I'm going to point out on screen here, what you're looking at is the DFS Army live odds screen. And you'll note that if just spending an extra 2 seconds to check the DFS Army live odds screen instead of just going to your local book, you have a choice of a 7.5-point line, an 8.5-point line. So already I could beat the Draftkings closing line or the current line just by going over to FanDuel. Easy money, free money for you. All you got to do is click it right here. But John, I know this is a key number 7. Do I need to tease this down to 6.5 to feel comfortable?
This is a nice tease. Yeah, I like this game tease down. Get this down to 2.
Or tease all the way down. There you go. I use the
Yeah.
term tease because I don't know what the fuck I'm saying. What I meant was buy a point. But if you tease this,
I like this
you don't
tease. Yeah,
buy the point you want to tease.
yeah, I would like. I like this because I do think they win the game. I don't think they lose the game. And then getting this down to 2.5, I think is nice. Now,
what's the process of doing a tease? What do I give up in order to gain all these wonderful points against the spread?
Yeah, so typically, people are going to tease 2-teamers. You're going to, and the most common one is a 6-point tease. So you're going to get 6 points in your favor on both teams, but you need to win both of those games. And it's usually at a -120 line. So you're paying 20 cents juice on that. Without getting into too much detail on the teasers, just if you can tease across 7s and 3s, in other words, a game like this where it's an 8-point spread, if you can get past the 7 and then past the 3, those are the most advantageous. You've got to hit those in the like 74, 75% range, and that's about where they come in. So when you start teasing games that are like -3, I see people do this all the time, -3 to +3, you're wasting your time. There's so many dead points in there. When you tease down, almost 40% of games end on 3, 4, and 7, or in that range. So you're just picking up a ton of value by doing that. So just keep that in mind when you're putting bets in.
All right, let's say I'm teasing this entire slate. Do you go Bucks, Saints, take the 6 for both teams, go like this, print the cash, convert it into Bitcoin, turn that into even more money?
Yeah, the Saints one is tough. I don't like teasing that one, right? Because I'm not getting the 3.
You don't quite hit it. I mean, the only other one that you could really look at
it's
is
tough in the
Buffalo.
slate. Yeah, I would prefer. All right, so I'm not getting the advantage of crossing the 7 with Buffalo, but I do cross the 3, and I basically make it a pick'em game. I would look to that. Just staring at it, if I had to tease it, it would be like Bucks. Yeah, Bucks Buffalo. I prefer that one over Pittsburgh. Let's say.
I was
over that range.
Pittsburgh, I wouldn't do either.
Yeah,
too volatile of a situation over there. Yeah, I was looking at either Bills or Saints as the tease part. I mean, do we really see the Saints not beating the Bears?
No, I mean they should win that game, but the Bears offense has looked a little bit better here in the last few, or a lot better, quite frankly, in the last few weeks. And you're only getting that game down to 4.5. I mean, if the Saints win this game, win the game by 3. No, you're not going to be shocked there. I think you'll be more shocked with the Colts winning than the Saints winning by 3.
There we go. I love it. I love that analysis. All right. In terms of this game, from a DFS angles point of view, we've got again a potentially more consolidated offense for the Bucs, with potentially Mike Evans, allegedly, maybe not going to play, but we don't know. That's not locked in. If he doesn't play, though, I very much like the listen, they're going up against Washington. The game total's low, but the team total's fairly high when you consider the spread. So they have one of the higher team totals on the slate. We have to be interested in these players, and they're going to score. And the Bucs do tend to score via the pass this season. And it's even more likely they'll be scoring via the pass against the Washington defense that's good against the run. They're not a team that you're going to run a lot against. So I think, Godwin, Brady, and Antonio Brown are all very, very Godwin, Brady, Antonio Brown, and Gronk are all very, very good options this week, DFS wise. On the 2-game slate, on the 3-game slate, you have to play a few of them. There's no other way.
Just quickly for Ken, before I forget, I would say 7 or better, which you're not going to get on that question. So,
you're at 7.5 on FanDuel. Yeah, you'd have to buy the half a point.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't do. When I say 7, I want that as
you want
7 minus 110. I'm not
125.
It's going to be maybe even 130, 135 if you buy it there. So I don't want that. But 7, minus 7, minus 110. I would start looking at Tampa.
There you go. All right. So back to this game. You have Ronald Jones and the running backs. We're gonna have to make choices here. I don't really like the Tampa running backs at all, but I mean, I guess Ron John is in the MME mix for the 3-game Saturday slate is all I can say. Not in love with it.
No, you can't be in love with it, and we never like running backs against Tampa. We know that that's the rule, right? So you don't.
Here's this is important on the Washington side. Yes, we don't like. We like Antonio Gibson all season, but we don't like running back as a heavy underdog against the Bucs. That has not been a winning combination. So my question for you here, I think Antonio Gibson is only GPP craziness, right? That's not the guy that I'm going to be using, even in the 3-game slate. That's not the guy I want to have as a core guy. But I do think J.D. McKissic holds some interest because of the way he's used. So he's a pass catcher. He's more of a wide receiver. He did continue to get action even since the return of Gibson. He got 8 targets against the Eagles in a must-win game last week. So didn't do much with him, but that doesn't matter. Could we go right back to J.D. McKissic?
Yeah, the two options on Washington are going to be McKissic and Thomas. Again, you've got to go back to what Smith does well. Now, there's been talk of they might be using 2 quarterbacks in that game. I don't know. I saw something. Rivera's contemplating it, tossing it around. I don't know.
Who's the other guy?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to. I only saw a headline, a notification earlier, and we did the podcast, so I haven't been able to investigate that as of yet. But let's just assume it's an Alex Smith day.
Oh my goodness! What if Smith isn't healthy and they got to bring Tyler Hinkie in there?
Yeah. Well, then it's just. I mean, then it's really ugly.
At that point, we need to pay up for that Bucs defense.
That very well could be. Yeah. So, but with the. Let's just assume it's Alex Smith. What does Alex Smith do well? This is part of the. This is why CEH was a high draft pick. It goes back to Alex Smith being with Kansas City because people were looking at how the running backs for Kansas with Andy Reid. A lot of that had to do with Alex Smith. Alex Smith is a throw to the running back type of quarterback and throw to the tight end guy. It's why he kills McLaurin. He's not a down the field guy. I mean, you just watch the games. Everything's underneath. Everything's within 10 yards.
He's just dumping it off 5 yards to the tight end.
Which is why, which is why I prefer the defense for Seattle than I do here because he plays it pretty safe. Like I said, if you saw those turnovers Sunday night, it really wasn't his fault. These were short throws, guys just making bad plays, falling down. So you don't expect a lot of turnovers from Smith. But what it does do is guys like McKissic and Thomas become even more valuable, and you want to stay clear of a McLaurin in a game like this.
Yeah, I mean it's really interesting, and the fact that Heineken. First of all, we're a Blue Moon show over here. None of this fucking Heineken. I'm not down with this at all. But the fact that Heineke might actually play in this game is a really bad sign. Like. What the blurb was, by the way, that Ron Rivera has not ruled out, or is it Ron Rivera is their coach?
Rivera, yeah.
Oh, it is Rivera. Okay, has not ruled out that Heineke might be in the mix. Meaning Smith health, we don't know yet. It's still too early in the week to really get a full sense of this. There's no mixing in Heineke because they need a breather for Smith. It's just that means if Heineke's in there, that means Smith just can't go. And Smith is a mobile quarterback. He's very old and obviously not that much anymore. But yeah, there's Alex with that news. Yep. He's a mobile quarterback that can't move right now, and that is a really, really bad combination. You could really have the Bucs turn it up and just light him up in this game. Again, I believe that teams play their best version of themselves in the playoffs, and Tampa, in their best version of themselves, is an excellent defense. Not the Rams, but an excellent defense, a defense that completely shut down Aaron Rodgers. And on that same note, they have an elite cornerback whose name I still can't remember, that should be able to negate Terry McLaurin fairly well, even if they did choose to throw to him, which Alex Smith generally does not choose to do. All right, let's move on to first game and the most exciting game of the Sunday slate, and that is the Ravens-Titans game. 54-point total, 3-point spread for the Ravens. Ravens on the road here, taking on the home field Tennessee Titans in a rematch of a game that they lost in the playoffs last year. Now, John, Jim Harbaugh said that the loss to the Titans last year really hit that franchise hard. They went out, they brought in a bunch of run stuffers, a bunch of defensive players, specifically because they were looking at this matchup in the playoffs as the one they needed to get, as a very important one they needed to get past. So here we go. Highest game total on the slate. Really exciting game. I think this is a load up everywhere, but I'll start with the 3-point spread, the total, anything here of interest from a betting angles point of view.
I would lean Baltimore a little bit.
Who's the public betting here? Because this is a tough one.
Yeah, let me look at I would imagine the public's going to be on Baltimore just with it. Yeah, and they are just on how they've been playing, but not overwhelming, nothing crazy. Just if the numbers I'm looking at are accurate, but I would venture to guess that you'll get a little bit more Baltimore action. They've looked, they've looked impressive coming into the playoffs here, and I'm by, we're doing that league that we talked about on the last podcast. So I've got some investment on Baltimore in that league. And yeah, this is a game I think you want to get, like we said, the earlier, you've got that other game that we were talking about that you're going to want to stack. And this is the other game, the Colt game. This is it. So I think it's just one or two, which, doesn't always bode well. I like when there's no options or a lot of options. I like no options.
I'm perfectly comfortable with this. What I've done in the playoffs in my mass multi-entry is I do it a little different than the regular season, where like in a regular season 3-game slate with Phillip Rivers on it, you're like mixing in some Phillip Rivers exposure. You're like, I gotta play everybody. You're even mixing. I don't even do that. I'm going to focus in on the quarterbacks that I like, and that's it. Lamar Jackson, what he's done over the past few weeks, again, he's back to rushing the football. Last week, they destroyed Cincinnati. They sat him early. He still got you 25 points. He still got 97 yards rushing, and he did not need to run at all. He just kept doing it. Giants game, the Jaguars. So he has been tearing shit up.
He looks fast. He looks really fast.
He looks fast. Yeah. He's running again. Is the passing great? No, but it's acceptable. It remains acceptable. It's not great. It's never going to be elite. But I love Lamar Jackson here. I think you've got a Tennessee team that can score as well. The odds makers agree. And so this is the game that you want to build lineups around. If Baltimore's ahead, Tennessee's going to be thrown. If Baltimore's behind, the Tennessee's going to be running a little bit. You can just mix it up. Now, Lamar Jackson, probably if you be on the full slate, it's between him and Josh Allen, obviously, for the top overall quarterback. I can make a strong argument for either one. John, is there a way to really prefer, or when I'm MMEing and I love them both, hit 25% here, 25% there, and what do I do in my high dollar sort of single entry? John, I need you to let me know. Is it Lamar or is it Josh Allen? I think it's Lamar.
I tend to agree with you on that because I think Josh Allen's going to get a little bit more play. So it's like everything else. There's two things. When I'm equal on a player, what's the salary and what's the ownership going to be? So those are the two questions that you have to answer. And I would generally going to want to
salary's the same.
Yeah, same salary. So now where's the ownership going to be? Who's going to be higher owned?
Man,
if I like both equally.
Allen's so much easier to stack that I think that's what leads you to Lamar.
Yeah, so I think you're going to wind up, in that situation, you wind up with Lamar, and then you can get more creative with your lineups if you're playing a single entry type of GPP. I would lean towards Lamar. Not
a must stack situation. Obviously Hollywood Brown has been pretty good for the last few weeks and on the up and up, on the come ups, but Hollywood Brown is one of those guys. Let's see where he's priced at on DraftKings here. He's usually overpriced on Fanduel. He is reasonable at 5,400 on DraftKings. So I think that has to be a guy that you're going to have some interest in here in stacks with Lamar. Obviously, Andrews has had a disappointing season, Mark Andrews, but he's the other top target in this game. He's had a disappointing season. There's no doubt about it. but the talent is still there. The double-digit scores are still there. So those will be your primary stack mates. Now, the flip side of this game is interesting. And Ken's asking, how much exposure should I have to Derrick Henry? Listen, Derrick Henry is either going to ruin you or he's going to make you. And I think there's a much higher likelihood of ruining you here, but it's not locked in. So you have to be careful. I don't think, first of all, I'm going to say this, John. I do not think you could play Derrick Henry in a single entry or in like I'm going to call it a cash lineup. My chalk approach will be not to play Derrick Henry. I don't think you can. And the reason is, again, Baltimore defense, his team's an underdog, Henry. Baltimore can stop him. So if Henry doesn't, at 9,200, if he doesn't put up 35 fantasy points, you're dead. And if I have to make a comparison between Henry and Kamara, I'm playing Kamara. It's that simple. What do you say, John?
Yeah, the difference is in the shorter slate, he doesn't necessarily have to score 35. And it's going to depend on the ownership, but you're going to have high ownership with Kamara as well. So if it's a situation, just if we're talking just some game theory, if it's a situation where a high-priced guy is also a high-owned guy, they don't necessarily have to always reach the number that we think to be in that lineup. It's always going to depend on how the other players pan out. It happens in NBA quite a bit. You'll have a guy, a $11,000 cost guy, and who's going to be high owned. It doesn't always necessarily need to be, because it's the combination. It doesn't always necessarily have to hit that 40 points, let's say for Henry, or 35, something like that. But yeah, I mean, Kamara's probably the better option. But Henry in a game like this, I know you like the Baltimore defense, but look at the total. You can stack this game. You can have Lamar and Henry and Andrews and get some pass catchers in there maybe for Tennessee and really stack this game up. You can do that. It's affordable. There's plenty of options. You don't have to go all that far down to find a running back to fit in and a couple other wide receivers to fit in to do it. So you've got the ability to do that in a game like this. I haven't looked at even. I mean, it's a little crazy.
He's going to hamper your salary. I don't see.
Yeah, but you've got options here this week. You don't have to, like, it's not, I think you'll be able to. Yes, Henry does. But I know you like Kamara better. I'm fine with that as well. But you can potentially do it. You can stack Henry with Lamar and even a couple of options, pass catching options on the Baltimore side with a pass catch. You just really stack this game up 4 or 5.
There's no doubt.
4 or 5 guys in this game. And be good. So yeah, you can do it. I don't mind it at all. I don't mind that play.
It was just last year in the playoffs that Henry did smash this matchup. So we know that it can happen, but I would say that's more of a tournament approach to me. Henry has such a low floor with no passing game involvement. The floor is just too low at his salary. The team will go away from him if they're behind, and we saw it in this exact matchup against the Chiefs last year, that when the Chiefs took a big enough lead in the final in the AFC Championship round, when the Chiefs got that lead, and I remember thinking like Henry had been smashing his way. It was like impossible to fade him, but you have to look at the matchup. It's still fresh in my mind. Why is last year's playoff still fresh in my mind? It's because I want to just erase 2020. So I'm like, hey, I remember last year. But it's still fresh in my mind. The thought process I had, which was like, man, I really want to fade Henry, but dude, how can I fade a guy who's putting up 40 points last week and the week before? You got to release the recency bias. Oh, release it. I released the recency bias. I do breathing exercises to release. You don't do that?
I need to get better with the meditation.
I do breathing exercise. Only on recency bias of players I do release. Right, I do like this thing, and I release the recency bias.
Yeah, release is a much different thing for me.
Listen, we already talked about your well-known fame around the Tampa strip club circuit.
Untrue.
That's well known.
Yeah,
far and wide. All right, release the recency bias. So, how much Henry do you need to own, Ken? If you're mass multi-entering, you can make decisions. You can go 0 and say, I'm fading it. Okay? John will never do this because he doesn't like to take a 0 on his mass multi-entry, but I do. I'll say, you know what? Fuck this guy. I'm going to play my slate out as this is the Bobby Wow way. All right. There's a difference between the Statsational way. How do you like I'm saying all this shit? Where's Bobby Wow and Statsational? I'll tell you what your way is. The Bobby Wow way is if you have a lean on something, go all in on it. Fuck it. Take the 0 if you're wrong.
I'll say that, yeah, the Bobby Wow way is the right is right if you're, especially for the smaller player, in my opinion. If you don't mind, if you're playing maybe a $1 150 entry and you don't mind, we don't want to lose, we never want to lose it all. But if you're okay with like, hey, listen, I'm taking $150 shot here. And because if Henry smashes, you're going to lose, none of those lineups are going to cash. So if you're fine losing that, I'm playing in it's a different type of game, so I can't do that. But Bobby Wow is 100% correct. I love that strategy for a player playing like $1. It could be a higher number, whatever the number that matters to you.
Mentally, for us smaller guys than you, right? I put myself in the basket. I'm with everybody. Here's how it works. When you're mass multi-entering, mentally, John, you're doing every contest in existence, so it's a different amount of money and it's more frequent. You never want to lose all your money. If I'm approaching it as a regular guy and I say my MME is about 10% of my exposure for the week, and I don't mind losing it all, I'm treating it like one expensive lineup. So I might do a $150 single entry, and maybe I'll do 150 lineups on an approach like that. As long as I look at that as one lineup, one contest, you can feel more comfortable full fading something like Henry. Or if you want to go the opposite way, you just go all in. You say, you know what? Henry smashed this matchup last year. He destroyed it. No one's going to be on him because it's Baltimore. Everybody's playing Kamara here. I'm going to go all in. And if he smashes, and which I think is a low likelihood, but it could happen, if he smashes this, then maybe I'm doing well. Now, I don't like to do that with a $9,500 player, to be quite honest with you, John. Right. I do like to do that with other spots where I just want to say, fuck it. I'm going to stake my week on this one thing happening. I don't mind doing that. And again, that's the Bobby Wow way of saying, go with your lean. And if you're right, benefit. Because there's nothing feels worse than what I see after every single slate. All of you people who are watching the show, not all of you, some of you, whinging about, man, I freaking knew, but I changed or I didn't do. Like, if you had a strong lean, I wish I played more of. If you have a strong lean, the Bobby Wow way says just play it. That dude's won $1 million more than once. So, or at least a milli maker more than once. So that approach, and soloed one. To solo being a big tournament, you've got to take massive stands on situations that you like, and even more so if it goes against the grain of the field. So we covered Derrick Henry. How much exposure? However much you want, Ken.
And you talked about all ins, especially when you do a 20 max. My buddy Chris, who likes to come in here, and I don't know if he's watching right now, likes to come in and break my balls on these pods. But I told you about this story a couple of weeks ago. So he plays 20 maxes. He plays the
that's right.
He plays the 20 the $3 20 max and maybe some other, but a fairly small amount of money each week. And he's now adopted the strategy of really just focusing in on one stack in that 20. He's up money on the year, which is fantastic. As you know, you play GPPs. If you can finish the year positive money, it's doing great. So he's up money on the year. But 2 weeks ago, he liked the Cooks Watson stack. They were playing Cincinnati, and he went against his strategy. And I mentioned this on the podcast, like when you're doing a 3 max, 20 max, play the games where you think the entire game could be good, not just the one stack. So he liked the Watson Cooks, didn't like the Cincinnati side of the game, didn't stack it with anyone in Cincinnati. Higgins went off. So he only broke even on the day, and then he went back and ran it again, allowing for Cincinnati, forcing a Cincinnati option, and he would have scored just running it once. He's like, I'm going to run it again, 20 lineups, 217 points, which was good for, if it was in the milli maker, was good for like second or third. So
ridiculous,
right? So again, so keep that strategy. I think it's a great strategy, especially in these 20 max. Come with one stack. Do it every week. Continue to do it. The week it hits, you've got potential to really hit big. You need to hit, one big one during the year. So if for any of you, people have DM'd me asking me, can you talk about 20 max strategy? That's the strategy. Pick a stack, pick a player, whatever it is, lock in on it when it hits, and then don't worry as much. Let the Dom station kind of mix through the players and whatnot, and hope you can hit that big combo.
Yeah, control exposures where you need to in terms of position. Like if you're getting all in on a guy you didn't want all in on, you load up on the stack. If you're getting like all in on Naeem Hines because his projection looks really good, control that.
Right.
Maybe you don't want take the stands that you want to take is what I always say. Again, Bobby Wawe says, don't hedge. Bobby literally 2 weeks ago said to me, don't hedge. If you think that Cam is going to suck today, don't hedge it by playing a bunch of Cam also. Just don't, because you don't realize that even spending 20% of your lineups if the field is at 40% on a guy, even spending 20% is too much. Just play your lean and play it all the way. And when you're right, once out of 10 or 15 or 20 times, this is the problem. People do playing their lean and they're wrong 3 or 4 times. And then like, fuck this, I ain't doing that anymore. That's not working. But it's going to be wrong like 9 times out of 10. That's the problem. Like picking the nuts play.
I'll have my stacks up. Like the nut stack is almost always one of those top 10 stacks, if not the top 5.
Yeah. But I mean, to pick the right one.
Yeah, you got to pick the right one.
To picking the right one, you're going to be wrong 4 out of 5 times if it's only one. So you could either then spread them all out, or you say, you know what, fuck it. I'm going all in on this one, because just hitting the right stack ain't enough. You got to get the right team around them. So you got to give yourself enough opportunities. That's how it's done. You got to lose money in tournaments frequently in order to try to win a tournament. It's a tough thing to do. Honestly, John, I had a hard time yesterday because I was making lineups for the NBA slates, 5 games, and I'm like, man, this lineup was so fucking chalk. There's no way it's winning. And what I've started to do is really, really utilize the new addition to the domination station optimizer, where we can limit total percentage of ownerships in tournament entries, because there's just no point. And if you read even Unho Bro's breakdowns of those mass multi-entry, which he does over on Twitter, and you guys can look for that or whatever, 95% of people who mass multi-enter lose money almost in every contest. And B, if you're entering chalk lineups with too high ownerships, you just have no chance to win the tournament. And there's no point in putting that lineup into a tournament. It's just a no chance lineup waste. You might min cash, but even that, we don't enter. You should never enter a tournament to min cash. So, all right, with all that being said, we went way off the rails on this game. Tennessee side, not just Henry, AJ Brown, Corey Davis, love them. Jonas Smith, great. Load up on this game.
Well, especially if you're not taking Henry, then you're going to want the pass catchers, because if the game's going to be high scoring, the whole reason you're not playing Henry is because you're worried about this game getting, perhaps Baltimore getting a big lead or whatever. And in that case, the game script plays into the pass catching side of Tennessee.
Tannehill, sneaky good play. So you might. You don't need to do this on a 3-game slate. It's just going to occur naturally anyway. But like on a 6-game slate, a rule of at least one player from the Titans might be interesting. I don't think I'm going to do it here because of the way the salaries worked out, but because I don't necessarily want to force AJ Brown or Henry into every single lineup. But maybe, on a larger slate, I've done stuff like that where you make a rule where a game looks so obvious it's going to go one of 2 ways that you can make a rule one of 2 ways in every single lineup. All right, let's move on to the next game. Love that game, though. That is an exciting, sexy game. Next up, we've got the Saints, heavy home favorites, taking on the Bears. This one looks pretty gross, John, from the Bears perspective, because I don't really see a whole lot that the Bears can do. I don't mind Allen Robinson. He could be running free, catching a lot of passes and shit. I don't think he's still got the questionable tag, so he's got that off of him. He comes through even in a losing effort. There's no worry about an underdog wide receiver, in my opinion. On the Bears side, though, I can't get too psyched about David Montgomery against the Saints in an underdog, and that 10-point underdog. I hate it, quite honestly. I don't like it. The Bears have a couple of tight ends that get work, but nothing gets me super excited. Anything on a betting angles here? Let's go there. Anything on a betting angles for this game, John? In terms of the 47-point total, 9.5 points, but I know you don't like to tease it. I'm definitely not betting the Saints, giving them 10.
No, that's too many points.
Yeah.
In that game, I would have a lean towards the Chicago side of that game. Chicago's playing a lot, but I think 10 points is a little much in this game, so I would look towards Chicago there. The Bears' offense has looked a lot better here as of late. Trubisky's looked better. Montgomery was running the ball well, but you're in a matchup like you just said now with Montgomery as a 10-point dog. I don't love it. We expect the Bears are going to have to throw the ball a bit in this game. Actually, the 47, I could see that. I could see that going under as well. The 47, but Breeze isn't our favorite when it comes to quarterbacks in DFS, and then he's been. It's been happening for a few years, but now it's getting even worse because he doesn't get a lot of the touchdowns now down at the goal line, so he's not throwing down there. They'll bring in Hill. It's also kind of hurting. It hurts Kamara a little bit, and certainly hurts Murray. They don't use him anymore, really, in those situations. Murray was great with if Hill's the quarterback, but there's just too much. The Hills that Hills situation takes away points, and you can't really use Hill either. So obviously,
no.
It just diminishes their entire offense.
To me, this whole game, even in the 3-game slate, the QBs are persona non grata on my lineups. I do not, again, break it down to the 3-gamer. I'm interested in Tannehill. I'm interested in Lamar, and I have some interest in Ben Roethlisberger. That's it. On the 6-gamer, same deal, man. Lamar, definite. A little bit of interest in Tannehill. A little bit of Ben, maybe not too much Ben on the 6-gamer, but that's it. Now, I don't mind Allen Robinson. I certainly love Kamara and Michael Thomas, assuming he is healthy and playing in this game. I love him. I do think he will be back, and I do think he'll play. And so I do like him as well. If Michael Thomas, for whatever reason, doesn't come back, the dude gets hurt in practice. He's weird this year. He's fucking weird. I don't know what's going on.
I don't think he wants. There's something going on there where I don't know if it's with Breeze or what, but I don't think he actually wants to be there.
Something's up, right? Psychologically, but beyond, I don't know how to analyze that. So if he wasn't back, then sure, the other suspect, Manny Sanders, Marquez Callaway, I guess, as a super punt. But Jared Cook is interesting if none of those guys are back. But overall,
I don't usually like taking a tight end as a big dog. Boy, it was interesting last week. I mentioned I had that lineup that was contending there for the Millie for a while. I knew it was a good lineup going into the late games, and I specifically looked at that lineup to see if I wanted to make any changes. I made one change, and I had Komet. I had one Komet lineup. That was the Komet lineup. I switched it out for Parham.
That worked great.
Yeah, it worked out great. But man, they threw. So of course I'm watching it, hoping Komet doesn't do anything, so I don't have to jump off a bridge. And boy, they were using Komet a lot. Now I don't know if that's going to be if that's a thing now, because Graham had been playing really well, and then I specifically was watching for Komet in that game, and they threw him quite a few. He was like the focal point. So I don't know what his price is here. But as a punt option, it's potentially, yeah. I mean, so that's a potential. Honestly, I don't know if you need it.
That's what almost burned you. Now, last week was a unique situation, and actually Ken saying about last week too, guys. I told you we weren't playing Allen Robinson last week, and listen, there was a matchup situation going on. I warned everybody about Allen Robinson. You don't play wide receivers against Yair Alexander's coverage. He is top 5, so. That, more than anything else, was the reason it was the Mooney show last week and the Cole Kmet show.
Yeah, you're probably right.
You're not throwing to the guy being covered by Yair Alexander. He's an elite corner. He's one of these guys that you don't throw to when he's on your guy. So that the Saints don't have a guy like that, which is why I think we can go right back to Allen Robinson and why I think the targets will come down for these other turds. The Moonies and the Cole Kmets of the world. But man, that switch to Parham almost burned you, man. If I would have told you Kmet was going to get 8 receptions.
No, there was no way I would have switched.
Yeah. I mean, that almost burned you. All right, let's go. Let's move on to the final game of the wild card round that we want to talk about here. That's the Browns taking on the Steelers. 47-point team total, 6-point spread for the Steelers. This is a game, John. I got a lot of Browns fans in my circle now for some reason, and they're a little nervous about Stefanski not being there. The corona, they say Stefanski is a real leader of the team, and he's a difference making head coach. I don't know how much I put into that though. What I do put interest into is Ben Roethlisberger being an old guy, getting an extra week, the bye week, essentially getting a few players rested for the Steelers. I think that's a net positive for an old team. Old dudes. A lot of old dudes on the Steelers. They're still missing some key defensive players that were lost for the season. But the other thing we talked about on the previous show was how, listen, when you first lose those guys, it's a much bigger impact than 4 weeks later. The team has already gotten used to playing without some of them. Whoever the middle linebacker is like more comfortable calling plays now. He's been doing it for a few weeks. So in this game, it's really hard. I mean, the Browns want to run the football. The Steelers want to throw. Who's going to, what breaks first? Can Chubb and Kareem Hunt and this Browns offense just run their way into a smash mouth win here?
I think it's possible. I will say this about Cleveland. It's probably the worst 11-win team I've ever seen. So I'm not expecting it.
What was a really bad 8-win team that went to the Super Bowl? Giants twice.
Did they? Well, they'd have more than 8. They had more than 8
no,
wins, didn't they?
No, 8 wins. Both.
Well, if you look, I tweeted out yesterday. I have, and it comes off the article that I did for the. If you go over to Sports Bet Army, you see the article for the postseason preview article. The Giants were since 1994 salary cap. The 2 giant Super Bowls were the 2 worst Super Bowl teams ever. The 2 worst Super Bowl winners, I should say.
No doubt.
Ever.
And it's does not belong.
No, he does not.
The Hall of
we
Fame.
We could do a podcast about that. You can't be a mediocre quarterback your entire career and get lucky for 2 games.
No.
Sorry,
Steffi Smalls.
But he will. But unfortunately, he will be. Jim Plunkett's not in, so neither should he.
No.
But anyway,
let's look at this game. Let's look at this game from a whole. 6-point favorite Steelers, right? They want to throw the football. From a DFS perspective, if the Browns are winning this game, Nick Chubb is running loose. Okay? It's going to be a Chubb smash game. No one's going to want to play Chubb. He's very expensive, and he's an underdog. And he's the kind of running back where you would expect him, you're much more excited to play him when his team is favored. But, I mean, in that scenario where the Steelers win, or the Steelers lose, it's because of Nick Chubb, no?
You would think so. So yeah, you would expect them. They're not. I don't have a lot of confidence in Baker Mayfield. I know he's had some good games here. He had the great game against Baltimore. But this team kind of they're gonna go as far as the running backs are gonna let them go. So the Chubb Hunt, that's where it's going to take them. I don't expect much from the passing game. So if you like Cleveland in this game, I think you have to like Chubb.
I think everything about this game on the Cleveland side is essentially low-owned, sneaky, even on 3-game slate, which is crazy. Like, no one's going to have. I mean, Jarvis Landry is not going to be popular of a play, but he is, the focal point, and he is fairly inexpensive for his team. I mean, he's going to have Joe Hayden coverage most likely, unless I'm off on my injury news, but he'll have Joe Hayden coverage. Joe Hayden's been pretty good. He's been great. He's cheap. I actually don't mind him as a play for 5,800, even if if Mayfield is not able to, if they're not able to run, he's going to have to throw. Jarvis Landry is going to be the top guy in terms of targets, especially now. I think Kaderil Hodgins has the corona as well. So it's going to be Higgins and Landry and a bunch of tight ends. I don't love a lot about the Cleveland side. I think everything about the Cleveland side is sneaky.
Look at Cleveland last week against this team, who didn't play anybody.
They did play a lot of defenders, though.
Yeah, but I mean, this is not
the guy that was out. I mean, they played their team. Actually, I don't agree with that narrative. They played their team. It was just with Mason Rudolph. at the helm. Like they didn't rest that many people.
Here's the thing. We've talked about this a lot. Your offense dictates how good your defense is as well. So when you're playing against a weak offense, it hurts your defense quite a bit because you're on the field more. Field position changes, and they couldn't do anything with it. I don't expect them to do a whole lot here with this Pittsburgh team. I know, like I said, they had that good. They had that really good week, the Monday night game. Everyone got to see it against Baltimore. Baker's getting a lot of credit. Getting this team and into the playoffs. I don't see them advancing past this game, so I'm not going to be very high here on. And I don't like typically taking the running backs as a big dog like this. So I just think this is it's a game that I don't necessarily love. And if I'm going to take pieces, I'm going to be more apt to take the side Pittsburgh pieces on this game. Not the running backs, that's for sure on Pittsburgh, but maybe some pass catching options. But as one-offs, I don't want to stack this at all.
I think the Pittsburgh running back is at this point unplayable.
Yeah.
Really gross situation. And that's the flaw of the Pittsburgh Steelers team as a whole, that they can't run the football. And Ben Roethlisberger traditionally has needed a really strong running game in order to be successful. So I think that's the flaw that causes this Steelers team to not be a real threat to go more than one win in the playoffs. And when you're not a real threat to go more than one win, you're probably a real threat to not win a game at all. So I think that Cleveland, as down as people are on them, and as worried as we are about, coaching situations with players missing from the corona and coaches missing and defense, I think actually Cleveland is a live dog here to win this game. I would not bet on the Steelers at -6. I would rather bet the Cleveland side of that bet personally, because again, I think the Steelers, it's going to go one of two ways. Either Ben comes back refreshed and looking good and more accurate, or we saw a few games towards the end of the season where his accuracy was gone. His team's dropping passes like crazy. I don't know what the fuck is up with that. Like a whole team's worth of the dropsies that's going on with the Steelers right now. Deontay Johnson cannot hold on to the football. Claypool's dropping passes. Even Juju's dropping passes now. It's fucking contagious over there. So I don't know what's up with that. But and then Ben's not, for a few of the more recent games, the accuracy hasn't been there. He comes back late and, he loosens up. It's like an old guy, you get out of bed, everything hurts for a little bit. And then after a while, you start to loosen up. But overall, there are bigger questions about the Steelers team as a heavy favorite to me than every other team. If you look at all of these odds, man, who's the favorite that can lose? I think it's the Steelers, man. I know the number is higher than some of these other numbers, but I think it's the Steelers. Well, who's the most likely favorite to lose? On your opinion, is it like you're gonna go like Ravens?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I kind of agree with you. Even though if you would say, well, I'll just take the lowest spread, like Titans could win that game. I of course the Titans can win that game. But I'm not going to do, I'm not going to take the shortcut cheat code like the guys on the TV broadcast do. And they're like, oh, my upset special is the Titans.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
I would agree with you. I think if you're looking for a true upset, I think the Browns do have the potential. But after I spoke poorly about them, just because I don't like Pittsburgh all that much either.
Well,
so I do think they win that game.
I'm looking at the flaws. Browns do play good defense, right? So you look at these two teams, money line -280. The Browns do play good defense, right? If the Steelers cannot run the football, so they have a real flaw. They can't run the football. The Browns, they run the football really well. They play pretty good defense. They can't really pass very well, but every once in a while, like good Baker shows up and all of a sudden they can throw. That's what I think the difference is. Like the regular Browns team that we saw all year and the one who you got your numbers from, which makes a lot of sense, could not throw the football to save their life. They could not pass. There was a little version I saw against Baltimore and in a couple games where I'm like, oh, wait, who's this guy? Who's this version of Baker? He's throwing well. He looks good. And that was against the Ravens. So they have proven that they can throw the football sometimes. It's not consistent, But a team like that, they can pop up out of the blue and grab a win. So my upset special here, if I don't do upset specials, but I to me, if I had to guess on one game that could go against the favorite, that's the most likely one in my opinion. But at the same time, I could also see the Steelers blowing these guys out. So, it could go a lot of different ways.
I don't think this game's a blowout.
I don't think it will be, but I could see it. I mean, they could do it. They have it within them. If they play the defense they were playing from earlier in the season, I think that would have been in the realm of things that could happen.
If it's a blowout, it's Cleveland just is not scoring.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to be like this isn't a 45-21 blowout. If it's a blowout, it's like 24-7 or something like that.
Yeah,
they just never really. Yeah, they just don't threaten, and they don't move the ball. And but Pittsburgh doesn't do a whole lot, and the game's kind of low scoring. That's the only way I think the game's a blowout. But I do think this is going to kind of it'll be a one possession game, and it'll come down to the end, I think. And so I think Cleveland has a shot, but I think it's just low scoring. I don't particularly like either one of these teams going too far.
One thing I will say for DFS purposes, I love the Steelers pass catchers, all three of them. I want a lot of exposure to these guys across all my lineups. No matter what's going on, Steelers are going to be throwing the football a lot. So Deontay, Juju, I don't care how many times you drop the ball, eventually they're going to throw it to him. And Chase Claypool, who they have specifically said, we lowered his market share a little bit mid-season to keep him fresh for the playoffs. I love Chase Claypool as well. So you've got to get exposure to these Pittsburgh wide receivers on all of the slates. 6-game, 3-game, whatever. They're essentially price and target expectation, my favorite group overall, because you just know Deontay's getting 10 plus targets. He always does. And when 14, 30, I mean, I could go through the whole fucking list. He always gets 10 plus targets, and these other guys aren't too far behind. So Claypool, more involved in the playoffs. Look for him to step up. John, let's wrap it up there. Geeks Vegas lines, betting angles, breakdown, Wildcard weekend edition. Guys, if you haven't signed up already for Sports Bet Army and you want John's picks, you get all of his picks, all of his details, his information. Every pick he makes is being shared to sportsbetarmy.com. Subscribers, go to sportsbetarmy.com. Get subscribed there. If you are a current DFS Army subscriber and you want to check out Sports Bet Army, get bets for the whole playoffs, DM John Statsational in Slack. We have a special code for DFS Army subscribers that gets you $20 off the monthly premium. I can't give it out here because everybody's going to use it. It's only for DFS Army.
Yeah, it should be at the end. The NFL's been on fire. I think 5-1 2 weeks ago, 3-1 last week, 3-1, 4-1, something like that. Yeah,
like ridiculous. And the playoffs are here, and they're very bettable slates. And we'll have some teasers and some parlays, all that shit. And of course, if you're watching this, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Do all of those great things. For John, Alessia, the sports gambling goat and DFS goat, and myself, just the goat of, I don't know. This is Geeks Vegas Lines. Good luck this weekend, everybody. Take care.